Hello, people. How are you doing? Hope you are doing great. And recently, chess.com released Magnus Carlsen Chess Bots. That is Sleepy Magnus, Ski Magnus, Chef Magnus, Soccer Magnus, and Magnus himself. And there is also a secret bot that is named the Magni, and its rating is impossible. Okay, you may see the board and see what there is Magni, and it's rated 2882, as you can see, and it's from United States. Uh, but actually, if you get into the chess.com website and if you see it's rated impossible, this is a PGN that I'm showing to you after this game. So it's rated 2882 here. But actually, this Magni bot, is destroying humans. Okay, anybody goes and plays, they are just destroyed. I tried to play and I'm slaughtered terribly, so I couldn't play this bot. And for the sake of humanity, I have brought up the Iron Man, the Stockfish 16, to take revenge against this Magni bot. So let's get started. And the first game, Magni took the white pieces, and it's not Sivaram. It's supposed to be Stockfish there, but I am playing for Stockfish, so please forgive me for that honor. Uh, Magni opened the game with e4, and Stockfish responded with c5, the Sicilian defense. When you see a Sicilian defense on the board between two legendary titans of the game, the Magni and Stockfish 16 on the other side, we humans generally don't understand the deep concepts of the engine moves that even Stockfish plays, because it sees around 30, 40, even sometimes 50 moves into the future at depth 50, and sometimes even more. So it's very difficult for humans to understand such moves, but it's just very awesome to look at this game. It's like we are going to a circus and watching all the drama happening over there. So yeah, let's get started. E4 c5, Magni played 3, and after d6, d4, the open Sicilian, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, and in this position, Stockfish 16 played the move a6, getting into the knight of Sicilian. And if you are new to chess, you don't know about the knight of Sicilian. Knight of Sicilian is one of the greatest openings with such dense amount of theory, and white can literally play any move in this position, and black has to know the specific response of that particular move what white plays. White can play bishop e3, white can play f3, white can play h3, white can play g4. In some cases, no, I guess g4 is not a move here. Okay, never mind. White can even play a3, a4, bishop d3, bishop c4, the Sozin. White can do a lot of things in this position, and the Magni chooses h3, the Adams attack, and Stockfish 16 chooses this cagey approach, e6. There is also a move e5 in the position, but Stockfish 16 opts for this e6 and not expanding too much or overextending, and Stockfish 16 plays in this way. Magni goes after the throat, g4, h6 to stop any g5 ideas kicking the knight out. Bishop to g2, bishop to e7, bishop to e3, knight c6, offering a trade of knights. And if white were to take, black happily recaptures, and there will be three pawns fighting for the center, d5 square. So white doesn't capture, white instead castles. But castles is an inaccuracy in this position, which loses the advantage, as you can see from the eval bar. The moment white castled, it's 0.4 right now for white. And once casting happened, it's equal right now. What engine wanted to play queen d2 and wait for black to take the knight and recapture it with the queen and then slowly castle which way it wanted to go. But actually, the Magni castled and the position is now equal. And if it's equal, it's bad news for Magni, not for us. We captured, queen takes d4, white centralized the queen without taking with the bishop because this queen cannot be kicked away easily. If you play e5, the d5 square is weakened. So yeah, so bishop to d7 is played. f4. Magni is thinking it's playing against me. Such a stupid bozo. Let's go and attack him. But actually, f5 and it's trying to attack me. But it's playing Stockfish 16. So what Stockfish says is, okay, good luck. Good luck attacking me. I will go bishop c6. Try your worst. Okay. Stockfish Magni says, okay, let me bring my rook before I get into the attack. And Stockfish 16 anticipates the attack coming on the king side. Okay. And it's moving its knight away voluntarily to get out of the way of these pawn storms. And in this position, Magni plays the move f5. Magni or Magni, whatever you want to call it. I don't know how to call it. So f5, okay? As a human, what we will do? We will say maybe, okay, they are attacking me, so let me uh, close this pawn wall to not advance further. Let me play the move e5, okay? e5 looks good. Let me attack this queen and then castle. But what Stockfish played is Stockfish walked directly into the kingside attack. That is, okay, oh, you are going to attack me on the kingside, right? So I am going to castle kingside. Do your best. And Magnus, are you sure? I'm going to grab your pawn and open up your position. Stockfish recaptures. And Magni goes for this weak e6 pawn. How do you defend the pawn? You cannot go knight c5 because bishop c5, dc5 cannot happen because queen is lost. So knight c5 is not possible. And this knight cannot defend this pawn now. So what Stockfish does is Stockfish trades rooks, vacates this f8 square, and brings the knight back, defending the e6 pawn. So that's the only way to defend the pawn. And if you see the eval bar, you may say white has more space with the pieces and black is looking cramped. But actually, Stockfish is better. It's zero point 0.7. Stockfish is slightly better. It's slowly taking the game over. Queen b3, rook c8, and after knight a4, trying to win control over the dark squares with the knight and the bishop and putting pressure, hitting everything, making it difficult for black to position the pieces. Stockfish just plays queen to e8, and this queen to e8 move is such a deep idea because this queen can help out with the defense of this pawn because it has x-ray vision to that pawn when the knight moves somewhere, and this queen can also potentially join a kingside attack. Or right now the basic threat is to win this knight, which Magni will not blunder, but even you and me can blunder. So yeah, this is a deep move. Magni plays knight b6 hitting the rook. Stockfish moves the rook away, knight goes back, and now Stockfish is like, who's attacking who? b5, get out. Magni wants the bishop pair. Stockfish says no. I will put my bishop, I will pressure along this long diagonal. My bishop is so strong. I have this bishop which can potentially join the attack. Why should I give the bishop pair to you? c3. This is the second inaccuracy by Magni. in this position, if you look it closer, this knight cannot go forward. It cannot also go backward because the pawn takes, and it cannot go gobble up its own queen because it's not possible. And so this knight is stuck in the edge of the board. That is a common saying in chess. That is, if a knight is in the edge of the board, that is, a knight in edge in the rim is dim. Yeah, I remembered it. So yeah, so it's in the rim of the board, so it's dim. So the best idea for Magni to go c4, undermine this pawn, and try to rescue this knight away. But c3 is slow. I don't know what's the idea behind c3. Don't ask me. Stockfish plays bishop g5, trying to trade this bishop. And bishop b6 is okay, hitting the rook, but the best move was to take the bishop and damage the structure. So in that way, at least Magni could maybe hold the game. The rook moves to c8, and Magni plays the move rook to d1, attacking the pawn on d6. So Stockfish should play a move defending this pawn, maybe bishop f4, defending d6, or maybe queen e7. The knight cannot attack the queen because the bishop can take the knight. And what else? It can't go rook d because of bishop takes. So maybe one of these two moves, right? So Stockfish 16 defended the pawn because it did not defend the pawn. It absolutely sacrificed this pawn for activity and initiative. Magni thought, haha, free pawn. Let's grab the pawn. And you can look at the eval bar. It's dropping constantly and it's minus 3.5. Stockfish is down a pawn and the eval is minus 3.5. So I don't have to explain this position. Stockfish goes knight f4, bishop to d4, trying to put pressure on this g7 pawn, and when the rook lands on the 7th rank, there will be an attack on the king, but it's too slow against Stockfish. Stockfish plays queen f7, rook f8, and when Magni went to grab this silly pawn on a6, Stockfish grabbed the bishop, and you cannot take with the king because queen f1, king g3, rook f3, king h2, and rook takes h3 is literally checkmate. Beautiful right angle triangle, right? So cannot do that. It can capture with the queen, but the lines are crazy after queen takes g2. It's minus 9.6. So it even cannot recapture its own piece. So the best move is to go queen f2 and offer a queen trade and threaten the knight if the queen moves somewhere else. So what Stockfish does is declines the queen trade and rescues the knight back. The king is running away to the h2 square, finding some safety because this king is going to be stripped open from the position. So it's running away. And e5 is a brilliant move. At first, it may look like a pawn hang because if I do or you do, it's a blunder. But when Stockfish does, it's brilliant because this cannot be captured because there is a lot of complications involving a discovery which will happen on the queen, and this is too slow. White doesn't have enough time to grab that pawn. So better Magni played this move rook a7 hitting the queen. Stockfish Okay, I move my queen. Do your worst. Now the pawn is defended, your bishop is hanging. What are you gonna do? Okay, you move your bishop, hit my rook on f8. I move my rook. Who's guarding the king? The queen? No. See what happens. What Stockfish does to this white king. All these pieces are grazing on this part of the board without helping the king. And king and queen are doing some romance over there. But trust me, romance doesn't work when there is a fierce attack coming in. That to how many? 9, 3, 3, 15, 20 points of material trying to destroy you. Knight b7, hitting the rook. Knight is captured, rook recaptures, and this is a attack on the rook, and there is pressure on the bishop. Sorry about that. Bishop moves, hitting the rook, and rook d3. Who's guarding h3? Nobody is guarding h3. So Magni gave a desperate check. King moves. Queen seemingly defends h3, but we just go queen takes e4, and this armada of pieces is about to destroy the king, and it's m9 in the evaluation, as you can see. It's checkmate in 9 moves, forcefully. And after bishop to f2, rook to d1, a brilliant deflection sacrifice, because if you take, it's made in 1, because our good friend knight is there, so you cannot accept this knight. And you cannot even move your queen somewhere, because rook h1 check is devastating. And after king g3, rook takes h3 is checkmate. So Stockfish Magni played the move bishop to e1, and we just take the bishop and hit the queen again, and the queen cannot go anywhere. It just desperately brings the rook. We grab the queen, rook comes back, and there is mate in 2 in this position after rook h1, king g3, and queen e3 is checkmate. But in this position, I stepped in and I wanted mate in 2 in this position. So what I did is I played bishop h4 check, attracting the queen to the h4 square and checkmating in the edge of the board in the h4 square. You remember this game? This king is checkmated on the h5. Okay? That too on the h4 square. Let's move on to the next game. I hope Magni could bounce back this game. And in this game, Stockfish 16 is playing white. And before that, once we Stockfish checkmated the Magni bot, Magni said, "Good game, you are victorious. 3 out of 3 Magni want to shake your hands." Sorry, Magni. Stockfish doesn't have hands, it has only fins. So you can maybe shake the fins, but it's uncomfortable. So I will extend my hands. You can shake my hands for this victory. Thank you so much. And let's go for our next game. And in this game, Magni took the black pieces. Stockfish is playing white. And after d4, the queen's pawn opening played by Stockfish. Knight f6, c4, e6, g3. This is the Catalan defense. This is the old Catalan. Generally, nowadays people go knight f3 and then g3. But the old books suggest the g3, which is played by Stockfish. And there is a line, bishop to b4 check, and this is a sideline. And there are two moves, knight bishop d2 and knight d2. I usually play knight d2 and Stockfish opts for it. Knight d2 and c5, played by Magni, striking the center. a3, asking the bishop, what do you want to do? You want to go back or you want to trade? And Magni obliges to trade. We recapture with the queen, not with the bishop. If bishop takes, then the pawn on d4 hangs. So we recapture with the queen, pawn takes, and all the beginner and intermediate players, what we do is we tend to immediately take the pawn. What is this? Queen takes d2, c takes d4, queen takes d4. Two queen moves. And putting the queen on the center, it's vulnerable to attacks like knight c6, hitting the queen, and the queen has to move again. So seeing all that, Stockfish plays this move knight f3, and this pawn cannot be defended because you cannot go e5 because knight takes e5. And Stockfish wants to recapture with the knight and centralize its knight, not the queen. That's a good idea to learn from Stockfish. d5, striking the center. Bishop to g2, sacrificing another pawn because taking this pawn is dangerous. Magni is 2 pawns up, but if you look at the eval bar, it's plus 0.24, which means white has incredible compensation for the sacrificed pawns in this position. So Magni didn't grab the pawn, it instead castled. Okay, it looks like some fishy thing, so I don't want to grab this c4 pawn. I will just safely castle. Good Magni. So Stockfish instead trades in the center, and Magni played this move e takes d5, which is a slight inaccuracy. It's just a good move. So a good move is not enough to play against Stockfish. I have to play the excellent or the best moves all the time. The best moves all the time to hold even a draw. Because this creates an isolated pawn in the center. It preferred actually to take with the queen or even the knight in some cases, but mainly the queen. But e takes d5 is, you know, kind of not that great. And now, this is an isolated pawn, and the square in front of the isolated pawn is blockaded by the Stockfish's knight. So that's the worst thing that you want to have when you have the isolated pawn. The square in front of the isolated pawn should not be blocked by your opponent. So we have a good control over the square in front, and this pawn will eventually fall, you know, positionally. And after knight to c6, queen to c3, threatening to take on c6 and take on c6 again, win a pawn. So Magni takes, queen takes, rook e8, disallowing the Stockfish to castle, because if castles, then the e2 pawn will be lost. So what Stockfish does is plays this great move, bishop to g5, pinning this knight to the queen, and eventually trying to take the knight. And if queen captures, you can win this pawn. And there is a double attack right now on that pawn. And if you take and if you play g takes f6, damage your own king side like this, we can just play queen takes d5 and be better. So after bishop to g5, Magni played this move, bishop to g4, thinking it's going to play rook takes e2 check, forcing the king to move somewhere, and Magni is better. But if you notice the eval bar, it's plus 2.4. And if it's plus 2.4 and your opponent is Stockfish, it's bad news. It's terrible news. And in this position, so instead of getting checked by the rook, Stockfish took his king to safety and played the move Bishop takes f6. What? Bishop takes f6? What about rook takes e2? But right now, Stockfish is hitting the black's queen. Okay? So Magni plays queen a5 check, getting the queen out of harm's way and still threatening rook takes e to the next move, rook takes e2, or even bishop takes e2, depending on where the white king goes. But Stockfish just counterattacks the queen. Now, intermediate move, that is rook takes e2 check, intermezzo, or Zwischenzug, because in this position, black doesn't have to move the queen because it can move the queen, but you know, it's you cannot just grab the pawn easily now. So Magni takes the pawn with check. So we have to move our king. If you go to d1, queen a4, king c1, and it's literally checkmate. So Stockfish saw all that and voluntarily loses its right to castle and plays king f1 because you cannot castle, you have to play king f1. But when it played the move bishop g5, pinning this knight, it evaluated all the positions involving rook takes e2. That's how powerful that fish is. That's the Stockfish. So queen a6 is played, trying to threaten some nasty discoveries. But Stockfish shoved a pawn forward, hitting the queen. So Magni just grabbed the bishop, regained the piece back, and you may look at this position. And if you are a human, and any human, you may just move our queen somewhere and hang mate in this position. And we are also down a pawn. But the eval is 3.4 and white is Stockfish. So Stockfish plays this move. Queen takes f6, trading the queen. Gf6, damaging the structure, and plays this critical move h3 because this rook is only defended by this bishop, and this is destroying the defender, trying to make this bishop move somewhere in defense of this rook. That is, it can only go to the h5 square and plays the move g4, closing down the defense of the rook, attacking the bishop, and now two pieces are hanging. The rook is hanging and the bishop is hanging. Sorry about that. That didn't happen. And yeah, and now Magni can save only one of the pieces and instead saves the rook because the rook is worth 5 points. So Stockfish grabs the bishop. Now Stockfish is the upper piece, but Magni has a pawn for a piece, and right now 2 pawns for a piece. And in this position, maybe a human will bring his rook to d1, try to win that central d5 pawn, but that could be defended by playing rook d8. But do you know what Stockfish played? Typical engine stuff. H6. This H6 move, the flank pawn push, is very common in Stockfish and in other engines like the Leela Chess 0, Alpha Chess 0. This just sucks the life out of the black's position. That's the Magni. It's like a snake, This snake is constricting like a anaconda or a python. It just constricts its prey to death, and this king is suffocating. It cannot go anywhere, and in any position, if the rook is absent and this rook happens to land on the 8th rank, it will be back rank mate, literally. And it freezes, most importantly, the h7 pawn. Sorry about f5. And in all endgames, this pawn is a liability. When all the pieces are traded, let's say we emerge with a bishop, and that pawn is on a light square, so our bishop can not write this way because I'm just explaining the concept in future, could eventually win that pawn very easily, and we can push that pawn into a queen. So that's a deep concept, and it's not easy to get rid of this pawn. How do you get rid of this? Have to move this, get It's too slow to get rid of that. So in this position, played rook d8, hoping to push the pawn. Stockfish plays bishop f3, trying to get the king out and connect the rooks and bring rooks into action. Magni runs away with the king. Seeing the danger in the future, Magni thinks it's not safe to leave the king on g8. So it's better to bring the king to the center as we are approaching the end game, the middle to end game. So it's better to bring the king away from this cage. So Stockfish plays rook g1, taking control of the file with potential infiltration to the 7th rank on the g7 square. And once that rook lands, that rook is going to destroy everything over there on its way. And it's anchored by this h6 pawn, which looks stupid. And the h6 is played on the move 22. Okay, look at this pawn. Okay, this pawn will cause the eventual downfall of this black king. Watch how Stockfish converts. Rook b3, hitting the bishop. Bishop is defended. King e7. Rook b1, offering a trade. You cannot decline the trade by going rook a3 because this rook lands on b7 with check and it's bad news. So Magni trades, Stockfish recaptures, and Magni pays the move b6, blunting this rook and defending this pawn. Alright, now rook c1 is played. Okay, let me take control of this file. Get in. f5, taking control of the e4 square even more and restricting the movement of the bishop to the g4 square to enable maybe the rook to go to c8 in future or somehow, that is basically restricting the bishop and trying to get the king and win the pawn on h6. So Stockfish enters the 7th rank, gives a check, king runs away, and any human including me, I will just go grab the pawn on a7, and it's the second best move. But Stockfish plays this move, bishop h5, voluntarily gets its pieces forked, moves the bishop back, and loses the pawn on h6. Don't ask me to explain all that. I don't know. I have to ask Stockfish 16 and it cannot sadly speak, so I cannot explain that move. And the idea is forcing the king to the edge of the board and it wins the f7 pawn. So this f5 pawn is also going to fall at the cost of that h6 pawn, and this king cannot enter the game easily. Wait and watch. This pawn is captured. What happens as a consequence of capturing that pawn? Rook g8 check, king moves, rook moves. That's a double attack. Rook c3, hitting the bishop, but who is going to take with the rook? Stockfish takes with the bishop, threatening to win that pawn. King g5, prophylaxis, getting away from that, and you cannot go play this because the bishop hangs. So Stockfish plays bishop h7, grabs a pawn on f5 and grabs a pawn on h7. Cool and calm collected. And rook takes a3. Now, if you look at this, if you look at the evil bar, Sivaram, stop keeping surprises. It's plus 5.8, and Stockfish is going to win the game eventually. So don't put any suspenses. It's plus 5.8 in this web-based Stockfish, which is at depth 20. So it's a weaker version of Stockfish. It's really strong. So it's plus 5.8 in this. Yes. But In my Stockfish 16 that I seeded at depth 42, yeah, depth 42, this position is plus 200. Okay, 200, not plus 5.83. It's plus 200. It's literally destroying. You may say, what? There are three passed pawns trying to go, but this damn king is weak. Okay, and I let it for calculate for even a minute more, and at depth 47, this position is M25. I'm not joking. Magna can do anything in this position, but still get mated within 25 moves, which the stockfish cannot see. It thinks it's plus 5.83, but that is life. And the winning move starts with f4 check, forcing the king to make a decision, and it goes to h4, bishop c2, monitoring the movement of the rook, but also rotating this bishop back to threaten checkmates. So now this king is trapped in a imaginary wall. This we saw in yesterday's game where, okay, that video is not out today till now. Sorry for the bloopers. There will be a video out soon where Tal sacrifices his knight brilliantly, a positional sacrifice, creating an imaginary blockade in the e file. Okay, so if you are still in the video and you got to know about the bloopers, congratulations for letting know that. Okay, so there is an imaginary wall blockading this king, and at any position, this can be a checkmate. So bishop c2 is played. Rook takes h3 is crucial, has to be played, and king g2 is played. And right now, there is threats of rook h7, king g4, and rook takes h3, winning the rook. So what our Magni does is gets the rook away from danger, and as promised, bishop to d1, creating a blockade, threatening checkmate. Check. Bishop e2, sacrificing the bishop. You may ask, what? What nonsense! I lose my bishop and I have only one pawn and a rook, and there are three pawns for my opponent and a rook. So I'm losing this rook and pawn endgame. He's up two pawns. But no, it's general rook and pawn endgame theory. But this is an exception because there is an immediate tactic hitting this rook and again securing this g4 square and creating a checkmating net for the king on h4. So that's why you remember the h4 square from the previous game. That's where the king is right now. So black cannot defend both checkmate and the rook, so loses the rook, and this is easy. Beginner players may screw up and may allow some pawn to promotion, but the king is close, so even they will win. They push the Magni push the pawn, Stockfish brought the king, pushes the pawn, puts the rook behind the pawn because that a4 pawn is not going anywhere. A3, rook takes b6, a2, and rook a6. Everything is time. If you cannot understand what I'm trying to say is a4, a3, rook takes b6, a2, one square away from promotion, but there is rook a6. So that's how you calculate. You defend the promotion. Still, this stockfish doesn't see the mate. Forced to checkmate. It thinks it's plus 56.1, but it's, I believe it's M15 or M17. I don't know. I don't know the evaluation about this point. It was already M25 there. D4 instead. King E4, King G4, hoping if you take this, I will at least grab this pawn, but Stockfish is not going to do that. Stockfish grabs the pawn on B6, A3, Rook A6. The pawn goes to D3, but we grab that. D2, but rook D3, we are in time. The king goes back because the king cannot go anywhere. We grab the pawn. King G3. The easiest thing to do here is make a queen, checkmate with the queen and rook, ladder mate, forcing the king on the h file and checkmating. But it's Stockfish, and Stockfish finds mate in 5, that is rook a2, forcing it's a zugzwang position, so the king has to go to the h3 square or should go back to the fourth rank. So the king goes to g4, and Stockfish cuts the king away like this laterally, and this king is almost like an imaginary box. King goes to h5. We get on the face of the king, take a position, threaten checkmate, blockading all these squares. So the king can come here to h4, stopping mate, but we don't have to do anything. We can just move the rook somewhere, and the king has to go back, and then we can checkmate. We can just pass the move onto the black and checkmate. So the king goes the other way. So Stockfish plays rook a7, and there is literally no other move for black, and the Magni went to h5, and Stockfish delivered mate on a7. And you remember the last game, right? The king is, okay, I will rotate the board. The king is mated on the h4 square on the h file, and the king is mated on the h5 square. And that is how Stockfish destroyed the Magni bot. And if you are into this far into the video and you enjoyed it, consider subscribing to the channel. And Magni wanted to shake my hands, but I wanted to shake your hands for appreciating the content. And smash the like button. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.